Hey, it's good to see you today. We know this is a few days late. Life sometimes gets in the way, but we're looking at Tom's going through Revelation. It was actually the second part of the church in Pergamum. Is that right? Yep, yep. I have to look at my Bible, scroll down. Pergamum. Uh, and my name is Philip Thomas, pastor here at Journey, and Tom Burns with Redeemed Idiot. And so we do enjoy, we try within the first couple days to, kind of have a recap of these, but it doesn't always work out that way. But we, last Wednesday, you kind of finished out the church in Pergamum. Lots of history with this one.
Correct.
Now, just why so much history? One, it establishes context, but do you just like the history of it as well?
I've learned to like the history of it as well.
Okay.
I guess that's a good way to put it. So when I was studying all this, I was understanding what I was saying. There was the reality I understood in the back of my head that as we're going through these churches, and especially going into this one, it's a state church, and it's the marriage of the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church. That's actually put in their doctrine. I was like, man, I don't want to come across like I'm just saying things that I can't back up to understand what is actually happening at that time. Because now we are talking about a huge religion around the world.
Yes.
And I don't want to be the person that's smiting them or talking down about them, because there's good things about them, which is mentioned, but there's some problems. And I want to make sure people had an understanding of where it's all coming from and why Christ, not my words, is saying, look, I got these issues right here and this is why. So give that historical context and people go, oh, that makes sense. Okay, I understand why. It's not just this dude standing up here on the stage like just pointing fingers and trying to crush the Catholic Church. It's not my point.
Yeah.
It's not even Christ's point. It's like, hey, just listen, change this.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So historically speaking, we're talking about these different churches, and they, in essence, are representing churches today, problems, good things, right? So there's an application to today. We've talked about this before, but they also are kind of showing the progression of church history, right? So we had the early church, that we saw. So the apostolic age, and then the second was the persecuted church in Smyrna, and that time frame went up to probably around 300, right? 313
when the Edict of Milan was put in.
Yes.
Is when it's
exactly. So the
Constantine changed everything.
Edict of Milan is when Constantine made it to where you couldn't persecute Christians anymore. It wasn't the official religion yet, but that was a huge step. So Pergamum is the time period from that to when it became the official religion. Is that?
No, it takes up to when what the next church will learn, Church of Thyatira, becomes the dominant prominent church, which is right around 500.
Okay. So, right around 500. So you're looking at around 313 to around 500. To around 500.
Yeah, I'll specifically put those dates out again.
Yeah, no,
there's so many numbers in my head.
Yes, no, but that's the general time frame. So this is that transition period,
right,
where Christianity has survived the persecution, and not just survived, but has actually thrived. Right. That God has helped them overcome to the point that they are, influencing the Roman Empire, to the point that Constantine, and you kind of talked about whether he was a Christian or whether he wasn't. We don't know for sure, right? That's something we'll find out, right? If old if old Consti is hanging out, up in heaven, we'll know. Hey, good deal.
I'll shake his hand.
Otherwise, we know it was just a shrewd political move,
right?
But even no matter which one it was, it shows the positive impact that Christianity was having,
right?
But what this does is, by him doing that, it begins the connection between the church, who has always just been on its own, to kind of becoming an institution that's connected with the government. Is that accurate?
So yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Perfectly accurate.
So that brings us to the idea of the Pontifex Maximus.
Right.
So where in the scripture, what led you, what did you read here, and then how did that get you to look at Pontifex Maximus? Because that word is not
No,
necessarily
it's not.
here in scripture.
So that actually came from trying to understand who the Nicolaitans were. And Nicolaitans is only mentioned a couple times.
Right.
Christ just vaguely says, I have a problem with these works. So
Yeah.
who are the Nicolaitans? So I just went down some deep rabbit holes. Like, who are these people he's talking about? And there is zero mention of a group of individuals in historical Roman, nothing, not even in secular writing, that there was anybody ever called the Nicolaitans.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes into. It's the Greek compound word, and it's a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, what are we metaphorically talking about? At least that's what I was believing at the time, or understanding. And that's when I started understanding that a Nicolaitan is someone that's over the laity.
Mm-hmm.
And that popped in my head. Obviously, okay, we know laity is a well-used Catholic word,
Mm-hmm.
but it means the people.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so over the laity, what does that mean? And yeah, you could take that and go, it's talking about Catholics.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do that. There wasn't not enough substance there to like go, yeah, because there's people that kind of thought that. And
Mm-hmm.
like, no, you got to back this up before you start slamming somebody or making bad remarks. So I just started studying the history from that period of time, who was in that town. And what I found out in Pergamum, that there was a group of individuals, priests and high priests and lesser priests, if you will, that came out of Babylon. And when the Medo-Persian Empire took down Babylon, the Persian Empire, the Babylonian religions maintained, but there was this falling out with the priests. I'm just going in the short order on this. And they basically were kicked out of Babylon and went and settled in Pergamus. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, so who are these dudes? Mm-hmm. So then I started doing a back study on these guys, and that led me into these guys that actually came from what was called the College of Pontiffs. There was some around 700, 800 years before Christ. And about the same time, the Latin was coming up as a language that was becoming a known language. And I started studying who these College of Pontiffs were. And I'm like, oh, these are interesting guys. But I mean, I'm really kind of seeing from like, this has nothing to do with Christianity. These guys were all pagan.
Yeah.
You know, this is about their gods, their high priest. But there was a parallel between that going back to the Levite priests.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is you see a lot of times, and we'll do more study on this, but you'll see a lot of times that there's such a parallel between pagan religion and their practices, and at that time the Levitical, you know, the Jewish laws, and then how they did, like, they're so close, but there's certain things God said don't do it this way because that's what they do. I want to be different than them. Make sure you recognize. Yeah. So I just kept studying more and more on that, and started studying the College of Pontiffs. Then I started understanding that it went into the understanding that the high priest is called the pontiff was actually called a bridge builder. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a stupid name. But then you start breaking down and understanding where that word comes from. It comes from the word pontifex, and which means bridge builder. And then Maximus was high. And they called that person, the high priest, the bridge builder, which that person's job was to go between the people, the laity,
and the God.
Yeah, you go to that person. I'm like, well, that sounds very Catholic to what I understand today.
Yeah.
So I started following it forward then. Okay, here's where this Pontifex Maximus, or this high priest thing, where the Nicolaitans, quote unquote, originated from, coming from the Babylon and up and down, or that concept of them, but the Babylonian priests. And I started going back forward again. And then as I got it more into understanding what was going on in Pergamon, where these guys settled, it became part of the church. Mm-hmm. And what they became now, they didn't maintain the so-called pagan beliefs, although it was still happening. That's why Christ calls it out, like, hey, you guys are still doing idolatry and worshiping other gods. It's not that sexual immorality thing. It's like, you're still doing this. Mm-hmm. And this goes to Constantine. When that's why I pulled up an artifact in the thing. Like, here's his coin. Mm-hmm. One side it says Jesus, and the back side it shows the sun god.
Yes.
And I'm like, so it's well known that he was kind of on both sides of the coin, literally and figuratively. Mm-hmm. And that's where we kind of question, did he ever really give his life? I don't know. And then that was what infiltrated the Rome versus the Christian. Yeah. And just use the word Christian, the Christian belief, and they intersected, becoming a marriage from the word from the church we tell it is a fortified marriage between the two. Mm-hmm. They became one. Yeah. And then as I kept reading on and understanding this Pontifex Maximus thing, and I realized in 380 AD is when they had the Edict of Thessalonica under the Valentinian and can't remember the other one's name. They were both serving as emperors at the time. They're the ones that said, okay, now, and then using the word Catholic in their edict was Catholicism or Catholic is the official language, which actually derived back from the Council of Nicene under Constantine. And Nicene was just the belief of like a Trinity. And then the other one was the Arians, who the belief that there was a demigods. And that's why they divided. Like, no, this is what we are going to believe. And that gave rise to that type of belief. And when those two emperors, Valentinian and the other one, I can't remember his name right now, when it came up to point, because a lot of the emperors were actually called Pontifex Maximuses, and they were called the emperor. It was a combined thing. So they took over the high priest of whatever religion they're doing. But these two said, no, this is a pagan thing. We will not accept the name of Pontifex Maximus. So they declined it. They would not take it on. But in 384, 4 years later, someone else came in and a vote was taken in very much the same way that happens with the College of Pontiffs, the College of Cardinals. They voted in the Pontifex Maximus, who became the leader of this church.
Who became the Pope.
Became essentially the Pope, the high priest, So, and the two things of the College of Cardinals that brought this up and the College of Pontiffs are designed the same, right down to they had the Virgin Maynards, I think it was called. Don't quote me, it's in the video. And then you have the nuns. They had the same roles. They did the same thing. They vows of celibacy and they prayed. They just kind of were a supporting aspect to it. But both of them were like mirrored images, and they just continued that context to what we know now is the Pontifex Maximus, and those that don't know is the title to the Pope.
To the Pope,
Oh, wait, made that clear.
No, I think so. So, and to me, this is just the way. This is the way things work in a spiritual battle sense, right? Yes, Satan is going to use any way possible to corrupt what is good, true, and beautiful, right? And you talked about the similarities between many pagan religions and like the Jewish practices, and that's obviously true, except there was big distinctions. Right?
Absolutely.
But the best way to infiltrate is to look as similar as possible and to use a lot of truthful sayings in order to get in the door, in essence. That's what Balak and Balaam, right? Hey, use these women to go over and seduce and to corrupt, right? And they weren't coming in and saying, hey, get rid of your God is stupid and doesn't make any. No. They were like, yeah, your God is awesome. Why don't we worship him we've worshiped our God this way, and it was really effective, right? And so now let's bring that to worship your God, right? That's kind of what's going on on here, right? And you mentioned this on Wednesday. This is, please, no one hear this and say, oh, the Catholic Church is all evil and corrupt. All of our churches have been corrupted and have been, right? Like, I mean, we're all under spiritual battle all the time. And we've all let down our guard at one point or the other in different ways, right? So this is not a condemnation of a whole group of people. It is recognizing, be careful. And I think any of us would see this, and if any Catholic that is honest, they would say, no, the Pope is not divine, but there is a danger. The door was opened to where that potential started to be there. And then you get someone who's kind of corrupt that moves up the ladder to become Pope. And then they can, right? I mean, we're in a spiritual battle all the time. So our institutions are going to be attacked by that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Agreed. And the thing of this you said, I'm going to reiterate the thing about like this Catholic Church attack or something. That's not the point. I'm
Yeah.
just putting out what it says. So if you think it's an attack, don't look at Christ. He's the one making the point.
Yeah.
And if you're on that pointy finger thing, remember what his warning is not any different to the warning of just simply false teaching.
Yes.
So if you're in that point, like that, we've talked about this, and I always go back to Timothy, and they're telling you that women can't talk in a church, they can't lead in a church, they can't disciple. Wrong. That's a false teaching. That was taken out of context. There's a warning to both sides. Christ, like, stop this.
Yes.
So don't get all high horse.
No.
Oh, we're not the Catholic.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not Catholic, but you're doing this. So
yes. But I think that is it's a very interesting connection, and it obviously it makes sense, right? The Pontifex Maximus, that was a practice here, and I do find it interesting how it was rejected. Because they recognized, hey, no, this isn't what we're doing here, and then brought in later. Man, Satan, if he can't find it in one door, he'll move to another door.
Yeah.
So that was very, very, very interesting. So it continues on. I do want to hit a couple other things. So Jesus is saying, repent, right? Don't go down this road of establishing this bridge builder.
Yeah.
Why? Because Jesus is the bridge builder.
The way, the truth, and the life. Right. Goes to the Father except through me. Period. End of story.
Yeah. So, and then it says, he who has an ear, let him hear, right? So pay attention. To the one who conquers, I give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone. Okay, so what's he alluding to there? The hidden manna and the white stone.
So the hidden manna, I didn't go deep into this because there's going to be a larger, a bigger,
more in depth.
Wow. No offense to Trump likers, but sometimes he uses those.
Yes.
That was bigly. Bigly?
There will be a bigly study on the hidden manna.
Yeah.
It'll be the most hidden manna ever.
I just did it.
We're in trouble now.
Okay. No one's talking. No. What was I at? Oh yeah. We'll do a larger study on this point of hidden manna, especially what it's talking about here in Revelation, but also its context will understand. We understand what the hidden manna was, but that's a simple thing. When the Jews were in the desert, going to the promised land, he took care of them. He provided for them. He protected them.
Yeah.
This is going to be another thing that comes up in Revelation, understand specifically who he's talking about. That's going to come up again. So it's really the best way I can put it right now in a simplistic term. It's his protection. I'm going to protect you.
That his protection and provision, right? Like,
yeah. There's a lot more to it, but that's the basic understanding. I don't want to dive into something right now. We got the time.
And so hidden manna. So the one who has an ear to hear, right? Who recognizes the dangers. He is the one who conquers, which is Jesus. Will give them provision and protection, and will give him a white stone. So we've heard that term already before in Revelation, right?
So we know. I mean, you can look throughout all of history, Jewish history, our Old Testament, whatever you want to look at it, and even in the New Testament, stoning was a form of judgment. That's how you're done. You did whatever. So stone's a form of judgment, but also in the Greek courts, the jurors would have a black stone and a white stone, and when they would put out their verdict, if they used a black stone, they meant the person was guilty. If it was a white stone, that meant the person was not guilty. So this is just simply saying here, Christ, if you overcome this, will find you not guilty. And since he's the one on the throne and he is the judge of judges, the juror of jurors, he is your advocate. If he says you're not guilty, regardless of what everybody else says,
you're not guilty.
You're not guilty.
Yeah.
And that's what he's saying. He's already taken that to the cross.
Yeah. Okay. So just a quick recap, and then we're going to get to Antipas. So this is this time period where you're starting to see this merger, that Christianity is becoming more institutionalized. It's becoming a more formal religion, if for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that this is an opening for Satan to kind of start instituting some human ways to run that religion.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening. Right. So that's where we are, and Jesus is warning, saying, hey, pay attention.
Right.
But going back, he also had good things to say about
Yeah.
this time, and it's because they going back to Antipas, right?
Yeah.
I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, which is Rome. Yet you hold fast my name,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even though they were starting to incorporate some dangerous organizational structure, they were actually still, in their mind, giving them all the benefit of the doubt. They were doing this because they were thinking this is the best way for us to hold fast to who Christ is.
Right.
Right. It says, so yet you hold fast my name, and you did not deny my faith. So they're not denying the faith of Christ. They're not perverting the gospel message. Right. As my faith, even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you, again, where Satan dwells.
Right.
So, who is Antipas?
So, well, the simple answer is just simply it's Jesus Christ.
Jesus.
It's a metaphorical. He's using metaphorics to talk about himself.
Yeah.
And he does this all throughout the Bible, especially even like in his parables. He speaks of himself even when he's talking about himself, saying like the Son of Man. But it's a metaphor, because there is no one historically that matches what we know about Antipas that this is talking about.
Yeah.
So when he says, so we understand Antipas, where you get the metaphoric understanding of it, it comes from antipater, the short name, the pronoun of antipater to antipas. The pronoun means anti-father, anti-pas father. So it's anti-father. So Christ had made a big deal talking to the Pharisees and all the woes.
Mm-hmm.
He went through a whole laundry list of things he's had a problem, but the big thing is no one's called the Father, no one on this earth. That was in context of the Pharisees, going back now to the concept of the Nicolaitans being over the laity.
Yes.
You're not over anybody. You are simply a brother. You are a disciple of mine, or disciple of the Lord. However you want to look at it. I have my Father. You're just this.
Yes.
But they maintain this higher thing over the people. Mm-hmm. So he had a problem with it.
Yeah.
This religious thing, you do what I say, how I say it, not just being a disciple. Mm-hmm. And they were rolling over the laity like the Nicolaitans, and you can see how they kind of work together. But that's him and his thing against looking to a father, something other than the Father.
Yes.
And then it says, my faithful witness. Now, like I've always said, if you want to understand Revelation, understand the other 65 books of the Bible, and you have to understand Revelation 1, which is one of the most misunderstood books. Most people just blah, 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 blah. Yeah, because that's not the fun stuff. Fun stuff's coming up.
Yeah.
But it talks about when he was at the throne, the one who was to come is the one that was the first begotten of the done, the first begotten of the dead, the faithful servant, or the faithful witness, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. Mm-hmm. And that's speaking of Christ specifically. So he is the faithful witness, the only person that has that title apportioned to them. And then it goes, was killed among everybody here in Rome. And what's funny, we're coming up into Easter now. You're doing this in sermons. So watching sermons, you'll see this week we're talking about how there's this big change in the courts when they wanted to kill Christ.
Yes.
The crowd moved.
Yeah.
What a hard time to maintain your faith, because everybody was shying away.
Yes.
And watch the podcast before this. I'll say this because you'll get more of an in-depth on this. But to that understanding, so he is the only one biblically that matches everything of this Antipas.
Yeah.
So when you go back and read, it says, for those that didn't deny my faith and kept his name, when I was killed in Rome among you, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And when you see it in the I context of Jesus Christ, like, oh, now it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Now we don't have to figure out who Antipas is. It's him.
It's him. Yeah. No, and again, and it talks about the killed. I went to the wrong. It says, I know where Satan's throne is. We talked about that as being Rome.
Yeah.
And then it says, of Antipas, my faithful witness, which again, going back to Revelation 1, Jesus specifically, I mean, it's pretty obvious he's the faithful witness.
Yeah.
So,
And
okay.
that's actually a specific term used for him.
Yes. Who was killed among you where Satan dwells. Now, some could say, well, wait, I thought Jesus was killed in Jerusalem, not in Rome. But who was the driving force that allowed Jesus to be killed?
Right.
That is why Rome was brought into it, because the religious leaders, they had some power to punish and things like that. They did not have the power to take someone's life. They needed Rome
Right.
to do that, right?
Exactly.
You think that's kind of,
Yeah,
I mean,
because
that's a connection.
if you look at, like, even we go back to when he's the faithful witness in Revelation 1, he says, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. And now we've talked about this before. Go back and watch Revelation 1. That people used to think that was talking about Satan, because we know when the man fell, Satan was given dominion. He rules the kings of the earth.
Yeah.
But that is talking about then when he is to come in Revelation 1. So this rule of the kings of the earth, we know Satan rules the kings of the earth. He's over all the kingdoms. This is the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
He is over it. And many of the Christians at the time, especially, well, all the time, but really during the persecution time, when they were asked about where Satan dwells or where Babylon was, they would point to Rome. That's what they believe where Satan sat. Not literally Satan sitting there with his little trifork and his horns up and burning tail and all that. But what was happening were things of Satan.
Yes.
And we talked about this in one of the other churches, that Rome is the depiction of Satan, and not hell, but Satan.
Mm-hmm.
So Rome is that point of being where Satan dwells, because it's over all the people and they're killing all the Christians and doing all the things. But that's where that comes from.
Mm-hmm. So, yes. And it just connection with that in the Great Commission, where it says to go to the ends of the earth.
Right.
The way that they kind of saw that is, man, if we can get to Rome, that's why Paul wanted to get to Rome so bad, right? Is that kind of represented the ends of the earth, right? Because if you can get there, man, it's that message is everywhere, right? So again, Rome was that earthly kingdom at the time,
right?
And it was representative of the ruler of the earth,
right?
Not the ruler of heaven and earth,
right? Exactly.
So I think we'll wrap up there. Again, I encourage you. What we're trying to do here is we're just trying to condense it, make it simpler, not go to all the detail, but yet the detail is important. And so hopefully this is a good companion to what you're doing on Wednesday night. And again, this is one thing. Not only are we looking at, okay, what does Revelation say about what is to come? It's teaching us about what God has been doing, right? And how he's been doing it and why it's important, and that he is the faithful witness, that he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he is victorious. But yet we also know we're living in a world where there are rulers of this earth that are causing problem. And so to me, this is it applies to whenever you're going through it, but it certainly applies to what we're going through today and our craziness that's all around.
Absolutely.
So any teaser for Thyatira?
No, no. Well, so Thyatira is going to be it is when the Roman Catholic Church becomes the Roman Catholic. They are their own empire. They're not the Romans anymore. They are their own entity. And interestingly, there's not going to. We have to go into a deep understanding of Jezebel.
Okay.
Because she's mentioned it there. So I'll leave it there. Deep understanding of Jezebel.
Jezebel, shockingly, not a biblical name that's used a lot today.
Not a lot.
Not many daughters are named Jezebel. And that's a good thing. Don't name your daughter Jezebel.
Never thought about that, but no.
You're right?
Yeah. There's Ruths out there.
Which is great.
Ruth
is a good name. Mary, fine name. Jezebel, take that one off the list. Just a heads up.
Never even thought about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, hope y'all have a wonderful week. This Wednesday night, 6:30 here at Journey, for Tom as he continues to go through the Book of Revelation. We'll see you then.
See ya.